For decades, China has poured billions upon billions of dollars into modernizing its military. It's done everything in its power to construct a fighting force that could be capable of challenging its greatest rival, the United States of America. Its officials regularly show off their latest missile systems and boast of their world-leading forces, hoping to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies and intimidate any nation that might dare to defy them. But beneath Beijing's bluster and bravado lies a far harsher truth. China's military is nowhere near as strong as it's made out to be. And without even firing a single shot, the US has repeatedly dismantled China's military strategies and shaken its confidence, forcing Beijing back to the drawing board time and time again. It happened in the 1990s, it happened in the 2000s, and it's happening again as we speak. That's the argument put forward in a damning report written by Miles Yu, Senior Fellow and Director of the China Center at Hudson Institute. Having served as China Policy Advisor to the US government and dedicated his life to the study of Chinese military and strategic culture, Yu is one of the world's preeminent experts in this particular field. When he talks, people listen. And in March of 2026, he concluded that Chinese military decisions are reactive, not proactive. He argued that instead of Beijing acting on its own initiative, its entire defense investment strategy is directly linked to the actions of the United States. Every time the US demonstrates military superiority, Beijing suffers a subsequent period of panic, purge, and absolute instability as it realizes how far behind it actually is. As Yu puts it, from the Persian Gulf War to more recent confrontations involving Iran and Venezuela, American battlefield dominance has repeatedly exposed systemic weaknesses in China's military-industrial complex, forcing cycles of hurried modernization, internal crisis, and political purges. In other words, the US doesn't even need to attack China directly to prove how much stronger it is. It simply goes about its business, conducting operations in locations like Latin America and the Middle East, achieving its objectives swiftly, and putting its military innovations into real-world combat conditions to demonstrate their value beyond any shadow of doubt. China, meanwhile, observes these events as they unfold. It watches as the sheer weight of Americans' military might overwhelms every enemy in its path. It sees US forces operate with such remarkable efficiency that they often suffer only the most minimal of losses, even while carrying out offensive operations in the most hostile of territories, like the 2026 war in Iran. And when Beijing sees all of that, it gets frightened. Yu cites several notable examples of this pattern in action. The first is the 1991 Gulf War. China played no notable role in that conflict. After the war was over, it was found to have violated United Nations resolutions by taking steps to rearm Iraq. But during the war itself, China strongly condemned Iraq's invasion of Kuwait and showed support for the coalition forces, which included the US, United Kingdom, France, and numerous other Western nations, as well as countries from various other parts of the world. Yet, even though it didn't have its own troops on the ground, China closely observed the conflict and learned lessons that would shape its military in the years to follow. Because when the war began, most of the world, China included, expected a long and drawn-out conflict. Iraq had a huge army, thousands of tanks, an enormous air defense network, and years of combat experience after its war with Iran. It was supposed to be an incredibly tough nut to crack, even for the combined might of the US and its allies. What happened next shocked everyone, as the US ushered in a whole new age of warfare. Its state-of-the-art stealth aircraft slipped by the Iraqi defenses without being seen. Precision-guided weapons struck their targets with incredible accuracy. Within almost no time at all, countless Iraqi assets were wiped out, while the US relied on advanced technologies, satellites, surveillance planes, and command networks to exert an unparalleled level of control across the battlefield. Within weeks, one of the world's strongest militaries at the time was effectively disabled, and back in Beijing, Chinese officials watched on in horror. Not because they had any stake in what happened to Iraq, but because they were witnessing a type of warfare they were simply not ready to deal with. The US had abandoned the Cold War tactics of the past, constructing more modern and efficient strategies on the foundation of precision weapons, stealth systems, and real-time situational awareness. All of a sudden, war was no longer a matter of whichever side has the most troops or best tanks will most likely win. It had transformed into something far more complex, and information was at the heart of it. The US was proving that it was possible to dominate the battlefield through data. China came to a clear and obvious conclusion. Its People's Liberation Army, PLA, had been built for a world that no longer existed, and if it ever had to face off with the US, it would have almost zero hope of any sort of success. It had to change fast. So, in the years that followed, just as Yu's theory states, China responded to America's actions by launching a massive modernization campaign. It began researching and developing more powerful and precise missiles. It poured large parts of its defense budget into electronics and cyber warfare capabilities. It did what it needed to do to try to close the gap with the US. And this was not a one-off, isolated incident. Indeed, as Yu goes on to note, the 1999 US bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade and the 2001 EP-3 incident further reinforced the PLA's vulnerability, accelerating investments in aerospace, cyberspace, and anti-access capabilities. Time and again, when the US succeeded in any sort of major military action or operation, the Chinese response was always the same. It tried to play catch-up. From the outside, Beijing's efforts appeared both ambitious and admirable. As the years passed, we saw large new warships launched from Chinese ports, advanced fighter jets entered service, and ballistic missile programs set new performance benchmarks. Whole branches of the military were reorganized and restructured to meet the changing needs of modern warfare. The PLA went from an outdated force focused purely on manpower and fleet sizes to a much more sophisticated army, equipped with seemingly state-of-the-art missile systems and ever-evolving cyber capabilities. But according to Yu, there were several fundamental flaws with how China went about obtaining these improvements. The first is that China has always been in such a hurry to rush its military modernization that it didn't want to take time developing new capabilities domestically and organically over the years. It didn't want to put in the necessary time and effort, as the US does, to plan and perfect its designs, withstanding years of trial and error and accepting failure as part of the process. In short, it wanted to fast-track its innovation. To do that, it relied heavily on practices like acquiring foreign technologies or reverse engineering existing designs. In some cases, Beijing even resorted to underhanded tactics like industrial espionage to learn about foreign military assets and then try to copy them. This meant that, at least on the surface, it was able to close those gaps between itself and America at a relatively rapid rate. But there's a big difference between acquiring technology and mastering it, which leads us to the second flaw Yu highlighted in his report. China may have had fancy new missiles, jets, and other assets to show off at its military parades, but it didn't necessarily have what Yu calls the underlying engineering precision and materials science required for consistent performance. In other words, it had the technology, but not the knowledge to truly make the most of it. Now, the third issue relates to the Chinese military-civil fusion (MCF) policy, which was designed to bridge the gaps and break down the barriers between the country's civilian research, commercial sectors, and its military-industrial complex. On paper, again, this is a smart idea, with one of its key objectives being to ensure that almost all civilian-level innovations, like AI, quantum computers, and semiconductors, can be repurposed for military operations. It also means that all organizations operating in China, no matter whether they're state-owned, private, or even foreign entities, are legally required to share data with the military, if asked. In reality, this policy has, according to Yu, fostered corruption and inefficiency across the defense sector, leading to the most devastating consequence of all, the questionable credibility of PLA weapons quality and reliability. Now, quick side note, before we go any deeper, you're watching The Military Show, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. While the MCF policy was supposed to make China's military bigger and better than ever, it's instead introduced poisonous new problems that have proven almost impossible to solve, with damaging, long-lasting consequences for the country's security and power projection moving forward. Here's why. When China effectively united the military and civil sectors, it brought politics into the PLA much more heavily than before. And in centralized political systems, bad news is dangerous. Those at the top of the food chain don't want to hear about flaws and failures, they want to hear about progress and success. As a direct consequence of this, A culture then begins to form in which problems are covered, shortcomings are downplayed, and leaders receive reports that only focus on the things that are working well, completely omitting any mention of challenges and deficiencies. In the military world, that sort of culture is incredibly dangerous. A new weapons system might be developed that shows some promise, but still has numerous flaws in its design that could render it completely useless in real-world combat conditions. But because people are too frightened to tell their bosses about anything even slightly negative, they ignore all those issues. They share glowing reports instead. They claim that the system is perfect, revolutionary, and world-beating, ready to deploy on the battlefield to demonstrate the unrivaled might of the PLA. Then what happens is that these hyped-up but imperfect systems are introduced to military service or sold to other countries, and when they're actually deployed, all their flaws are revealed for the world to see. As Yu himself writes, "A political system built on propaganda encourages inflated claims and self-deception, masking real deficiencies until they're exposed under operational conditions. And when those deficiencies are at last exposed, China always seems to react the same way, with a purge. If a system that was supposed to be groundbreaking is revealed to be subpar, the CCP initiates investigations which are often framed around the idea of weeding out corruption in the country's defense sector. Inevitably, after weeks or months of these investigatory measures, people in power are suddenly stripped of that power. Military officers are made to resign or forcefully removed from their posts. Defense executives vanish from public view overnight, and what could have been a serious investigation into systemic issues within the CCP and PLA becomes little more than a witch hunt for the government's latest scapegoat." As Yu explained, this creates a cycle in which political purges replace technical reform. Instead of addressing the root cause of the issue, the CCP simply fires a few people and goes right back to doing things the exact same way, until the next big failure comes along and they do it all over again. It's not only a ridiculous cycle, but a destructive one. Every time the CCP does one of its purges, even if it may remove some corrupt officials here and there, it's also getting rid of people with years or even decades of experience and expertise. And in doing so, it undermines its own capacity for learning and improvement. The more this cycle perpetuates, the worse it gets, with you writing that innovation becomes riskier, not safer, truth becomes more dangerous than error. This is why America doesn't need to fire a single shot to pile pressure on the PLA. It doesn't need any sort of direct confrontation with Beijing to flex its military muscles. It simply needs to continue demonstrating its superiority at every given opportunity, knowing that China's system will spiral into panic and cannibalize itself in the aftermath. And in 2026, the US has demonstrated its superiority on several occasions, and we've seen the Chinese self-destructive cycle play out right on cue. In January, for example, the US carried out Operation Absolute Resolve. In the span of a single night, in under 3 hours to be more precise, US forces bombed infrastructure across northern Venezuela, eliminated air defense systems, and captured the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, from a fortified compound in Caracas. To crown this achievement, not a single American life was lost in the process. Then in February, in conjunction with Israel, the US launched a war with Iran. It carried out one of the fastest and most impactful bombing campaigns the world has ever seen, killing large parts of the country's leadership group, including its former supreme leader, as well as wiping out numerous air defense systems, missile bases, and other high-value targets. It went on to enforce a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, wiping out large parts of Iran's military forces and repelling numerous attacks while suffering only minimal losses. In both of these conflicts, America's opponents, Venezuela and Iran, were relying, in part, on China-supplied assets, including missile platforms, radars, and air defense networks. As you note, these assets repeatedly failed to perform when confronted with advanced US stealth and electronic warfare capabilities. These are the very same systems that were promoted in China as being able to cope with the latest and greatest threats, even under intense pressure. Yet, one by one, they fell at the first hurdle. The flagship HQ-9B air defense system, reportedly used in Iran, for example, failed to intercept American or Israeli aircraft. China's YLC-8B radars also proved relatively worthless and were quickly wiped off the map. And even when Iran deployed Chinese-made supersonic CM-302 anti-ship missiles, they failed to strike their targets. Seeing these failures, The CCP could and perhaps should have carried out a serious review into how and why these weapon systems had been rated so highly, yet failed to live up to expectations. Instead, it did what it's always done, another purge. As Yu explained, large numbers of senior PLA commanders have been made non-persons and disappeared from public view, including figures at the highest levels of command. Many experienced military generals have simply disappeared from public appearances and political gatherings, and an estimated 2/3 of the country's Central Military Commission, the highest military command authority in China, have been removed from their posts since the start of the year. In the scientists and industrial sector too, the purge has taken its toll. Yu cites examples like Hu Yongming, one of the leading scientists in the naval aviation and carrier development industry, and Yang Wei, one of China's top advanced fighter aircraft designers. Other key figures to have been purged include Wai Yiyin, a defense missile researcher, and Wu Manqing, a radar and counter-stealth specialist. Some officials have even been severely prosecuted, like Tan Ruisong, chairman of the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, who was given a suspended death sentence on charges of corruption. Other figures have died in mysterious circumstances, like Fang Daining and Yang Hong, who were both hypersonic weapons researchers with years of experience. All of this is a direct result of America's military triumphs, which, as Yu explains, have had a dual effect on China's weapons development. On the one hand, the US's successes have forced China to adapt, pursuing its fast-track modernization campaigns and upgrading its capabilities, pouring huge amounts of funds and resources into developing new weapons, vehicles, vessels, and defensive systems to show off to the world. At the same time, American operations in places like Iran and Venezuela have also served as stress tests for China's advancement, and, unfortunately for Beijing, it's repeatedly failed those tests. Its assets have been exposed as weak, faulty, and utterly unable to live up to their lofty expectations. This in turn has triggered a torrent of turmoil within the CCP itself, with officials purged across the length and breadth of the Chinese defense and research sectors. The end result is described as a paradox by Yu, one in which the CCP's drive to rival or even surpass the US fuels it to pursue increasingly ambitious military programs. Yet, the very same system that enables those programs also prevents them from fulfilling their true potential. If China had a more rational, grounded system, or more of a clear divide between its politics and its military, then perhaps this sort of thing wouldn't happen. The country would be able to put in the necessary time and effort to achieve its military ambitions, enduring the same highs and lows as other major military powers, embracing failure not as something to be ignored or punished, but as something to be embraced, a vital part of the learning process. Instead, China has built a system that erases the very capacity for true innovation. Thus, progress remains uneven and dangerously fragile. Concluding, Yu notes, as long as this dynamic persists, each new demonstration of US military superiority will not only challenge China externally, but also destabilize it internally, reinforcing the very gap it seeks to close. So, even though it isn't directly facing China on the battlefield, Washington continues to maintain an edge over Beijing. Each military operation serves to demonstrate US dominance, repeatedly disrupting and destabilizing the strategies of its greatest global rival. Now, for more China-related analysis, check out this video, which looks at how Beijing's plans to invade Taiwan may have been thwarted already before the first shot was even fired by a combination of the US, Ukraine, and Japan. Alternatively, watch this video to see how the US achieved something once thought impossible and sent China running for cover in the process. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to The Military Show for more great content just like this.